Welcome to edusati.com, your partner in education. In this session, we'll discuss the concept of reading comprehension. Any examination that you are giving that asks you or tests you an aptitude portion has a very significant part of reading comprehension questions. Now, say to be a management entrance test or a banking test or a staff selection and commission test or any sort of test, reading comprehension would be a sure uh, part or a sure question that you'll come across, right? Now, this is a very simple and scoring part of the examination. Why? Because the information that has been provided to you, you're being questioned on that very information. So you have this whole access of the passage that has been provided as an RC, and the questions that are asked, they are not asked somewhere from like they're not asked somewhere from beyond the scope of this passage. So you have the passage and you have questions and you can find the answers directly. It's just like an open book test for you. You're given a book and you're given questions, you just read the book and answer the questions, or you're just writing them as it is. It is very convenient for you to find the answers. And moreover, there are many questions based on reading comprehension. So, for example, in the verbal ability part, if there are 50 questions that are asked, out of these 50, minimum 15 questions would be based on reading comprehensions. So, if even if I talk about just attempting the reading comprehension part, even if you just do the RCs from the verbal ability and leave the entire other passage, you still score good. Why? Because there are many questions based on reading comprehensions, right? So RC is a very, very integral and a very important part of of any verbal ability examination. Now let us understand what exactly is an RC. It is just like a puzzle. You're given with some statements, just that now these statements are not objective, they are very elaborately stated. You're given so much data related to that very thing. So it's not simply stated that A is sitting on B. It's stated, it's something stated like A wearing a pink cap uh, has is sitting on the chair with his beautiful laptop in his hand and something. So a normal objective statement, it's just wildly spoken. With so much of useless information attached there. And your task is just to find which part of the information is important to you and which part of the information is not important to you. Once you have done that, you have the most appropriate things in your hand, and then whatever question is being asked, you know where is the answer and you know what is the answer. It's very, very important. And the scoring part, it's just like a puzzle. That's it. A thing that will intrigue you is that the person who has created the RC and the person who has written the passage are two different people. Now, for example, I'm writing a question paper for any entrance test. What would I do? I have to put some reading comprehension. So, what will I do? I don't have that much of time that I'll start thinking about some weird topic and that start making my own views on it and then start writing this stuff. No, nothing like that. I'll just pick up any passage, any random passage that I come across in a newspaper or even in any book that I had ever read or a magazine or a blog even, right? So I just pick that up and I just read it nicely, frame some questions. Now what do I do? What do I do is I read that passage nicely, right? I pick up some important line that is very conveniently written, and I make a question on it. Supposingly, I read the line A is sitting on the chair. I'll just pick that line up, and I'll make a question. Where is A sitting? Right? And now the options. The first option obviously would be the answer itself. That is, he's sitting on the chair. The second option, third option, fourth option, I'll just modify the answer. He's sitting on a big chair. Now, my some of my friends, what would they do is, okay, he's sitting on a chair. Okay, the option number B says he's sitting on a big chair. I'm not reading the word big and I'll just mark the answer. It goes incorrect. Why? I've altered the option. The passage says he's just sitting on a chair, not a big, not small, not green, red, yellow, nothing like that. It just says that he's sitting on chair, right? and I've not read big. Although I've not read big, I'll just mark it as big chair. Why? Because it is somewhat analogous to chair, right? But this is how I create the wrong options as well, right? If it is said that say India is the producer of wheat and it is followed by China, right? And one of the options would read China is the second largest producer of wheat. Now, what happened? Although I read it just like India is the producer of wheat and it is followed by China, but I never mentioned that India is the largest producer of wheat. But some of us would, what would we do? That India is the largest and China, it is followed by China. So China obviously becomes the second largest. So the answer is second largest, right? So no, that way I've created the wrong options. So I, being a question paper setter, what have I done? I have created the wrong options as well as the right options, and this is how I'm testing you on, right? Since you have read the passage nicely, you did not read that India is the largest producer. You've just read that it is followed by China. So you'll not mark the answer, never mark the answer as that China is the second largest producer, right? So this is how I create or test the reading comprehension questions, right? So you, what exactly happens is that you're given a paragraph and there would be questions that will ask either you to analyze the given passage. So for example, you'll say uh, what is the main understanding that we derive from reading the passage. So if you have read the passage, obviously you'll have some knowledge of what exactly is happening in the passage. You'll be able to answer this question. Interpret the idea, right? What is the theme of the passage, right? Or what can you conclude from the given passage, or what can you conclude from this very given line? These are some things that might be asked as questions to you in the reading comprehension exercise, right? What exactly does he evaluate? He evaluates your understanding of the words. Just as I say, for example, it said, one of the line reads, Queen Elizabeth had a multitudinous dress, wearing a multitudinous dress, entered the dance floor. And he'll underline the word multitudinous. Now, if I read the line, it says Queen Elizabeth wearing a multitudinous dress. That means she has entered wearing a some good or nice dress, so it must relate to beauty. So your understanding, your contextual vocabulary is being tested in reading comprehension. Your logical relationship between the points. As we took the example, uh, if I said India is the producer of wheat followed by China, so you can logically relate that China is also producing wheat. Or you can also relate that China is producing wheat less in quantities as much as is produced in India. But you cannot conclude that it is the second largest producer. Why? Because I've never said it is the largest, that India is the largest producer, right? So it'll check your understanding of the concepts, your logical relationship between the given concepts. It may check about your inferences. It's something like that they are playing with the words. They've written something and they'll check whether or not you understand it in the very appropriate manner, right? So they're checking whether or not you're able to infer the correct information from the passage, or they'll ask you directly some quantitative data. How much percentage of people were present on the day of, say, elections, right? That will be explicitly mentioned in the passage. You just need to read through the lines and you'll get the answer. That's very, very convenient, right? While answering the questions, now we face certain problems, and the basic problems are of the speed and understanding. Now, what happens is that you have to solve minimum like 150 to 200 questions in 2 hours, and that is very tricky. Why? Because one, the number of questions is so large, right? Second, the time given is very less in comparison to the number of the questions. Third, all the questions are from different arenas. Some are based on quantitative techniques. Within the quantitative techniques, they are based on trigonometry or permutation combination or probability. Like with some questions, are a few of them are from English. They'll test your grammar in some of them, your understanding of vocabulary in some of them, and so on and so forth. So that becomes again very tricky for you, right? So the biggest problem that we face is of the speed, because therein you'll have to speed up yourself. You have to do the things very very quickly so as you answer many questions within these 2 hours, right? So you have to maximize your attempt. And especially if it comes to reading comprehensions, if you start reading it very nicely and easily, it will take like 40 minutes for you to read the questions and read the passage and understand it very very thoroughly, and then answer the question in the next 10 minutes. But therein we have to apply some techniques by which we are able to answer both, or like for example, if there are 2 reading comprehensions, we have to answer them both these in like 10 to 15 minutes or 20 minutes. Why? Because we have to attempt the other sections of the question paper as well, right? So speed is the very very important thing. And secondly, that the while answering the questions of reading comprehension, we'll never be able to understand what exactly is happening. So how do we deal with these problems? So the problem of speed, it cannot be dealt within one video session or 2 or 3 video sessions. We'll have to develop the practice of reading, right? So increase, like, just increase the number of times you read in a day, or increase the your reading habit, or enhance your reading habit. Start reading newspapers, starting reading more of the magazines. This will help you to enhance your reading speed, and once your reading speed is developed, you'll be able to read the big information in lesser time, right? Secondly, analyze which parts of your aptitude take lesser amount of time to solve. So for example, if I'm good in mathematics, for example, right, so what will I do is I'll solve the mathematics part first so as I'm able to score save much of the time and then move to reading comprehensions. But if I'm good in reading comprehensions, then probably, and I'm able to do it in like 15-20 minutes with a greater amount of accuracy, I'll do it and keep it in the side. So it depends on your strategy as well. And then increase your focus. Do not multitask while you are, reading the passage. If you're doing that, you'll never understand what exactly is the passage talking about. And about the understanding, I'd just say that try and enhancing your vocabulary, because the type of the words that they'll use in the passages, you might not be aware of all of them, right? Or even if you are aware, might be the meaning that you know does not fit directly or conveniently into that very passage, right? Next, just try and make the summary of all these points that you're reading. Just try and make a flow chart of it. This would help you to break up the information this entire that has been passed in this entire passage. And when you have done that, you'll be very conveniently able to judge which question should be answered from which part of the passage, right? So if some question asks you the conclusions, and you know that the conclusions are written in the paragraph number 4, so you'll directly jump over to the paragraph number 4 and just read that and answer the question. So just try and make some summary of the entire reading that you have done, right? What exactly happens is, like, why am I focusing more on understanding? That while you are reading, you do not understand one word. And since you've not understood the word, you'll not understand the meaning of the sentence. And this thing will just, you'll keep it in your mind, and then whatever you'll be reading, you'll not make the sense of it. It will not make any sense to you. And eventually it'll lead to lack of interest. You'll not feel like reading the entire passage. You'll misread it. You'll not nicely read it, and what would eventually happen would be that you'll read something and it would imply something else, and your answers would be another dimension to this entire trio, right? And you'll always answer it incorrectly. So that is the reason, these are the things that we need to come over while we are answering the questions. Now, after that, we have understood what exactly happens in the reading comprehensions. Let's start our discussion about them. So, the very first exercise that we'll do is that we'll understand how do we master the concept of understanding. Uh, By what I mean is that we must understand why is this reading comprehension or this passage being presented to you, right? You might come across questions like give a suitable title to the passage, or why is this passage being presented, or what is the concern of the author, or something like that, right? So these questions are basically checking your ability to understand the passage. So whatever has been presented, have you understood it or not? Within that reading, were you able to estimate why is this passage written or not? Right? So what do we do is, whenever we are reading, now this entire passage would be broken into sub parts or these smaller paragraphs. We'll write the main points of each of the paragraph. And eventually, when we've done that, we'll develop a primary purpose of the writing. Like, we'll understand, okay, the first paragraph discusses the problem. Second paragraph, the first cause of the problem. Third paragraph, the second cause of the problem. Fourth paragraph discusses how can we deal with these problems. Fifth paragraph, what should be done so as we come over the entire problem. So in these five subpoints, I can simply make out that we are discussing a problem, its main causes, and how can we deal with these causes. So my primary purpose of writing is understanding the problem, this given situation, and how do I deal with this situation, and the reasons that I have added. And this will not only help you to understand the theme or the theme of the passage, it will also help you to ascertain what is the title to the passage, because the title and the primary purpose are always analogous. Now we've all read the story of the thirsty crow. Now this story, if I write it in a big passage and subdivide it into paragraphs, so the first paragraph would describe how is the crow thirsty. Second describes how he found the pot. Third, how he put the pebbles into the pot. Fourth, how he has how he drank the water and went. And the entire passage is talking about how did he, or how did it quench its thirst. So that is the reason I wrote it is thirsty crow, right? So it'll so the my title of the passage is analogous to whatever has have I understood in the passage, so they are complementary, right? And one thing, although we know that the story of thirsty crow basically tells us that where there is a will there is a way, it helps us to understand this very concept, this very funda of our life. But uh, it cannot be the title, because it's a very broad term. Where there is a will there is a way, it does not relate directly to a crow and uh, its thirst, right? Or it might, the crow is parching or not does not make sense to where there is a will there is a way, right? So all these bigger or broader options are never my primary purposes, right? Or they are never my titles, right? So you, if ever you ask the question that asks to test the main idea or your understanding, we'll never answer these questions using very wide or broad terms, right? Now let us take an example and understand how do we do the sequences, or how do we divide the important information, right? Now you may pause this video and read the entire passage and try and interpret which part of the information is passed in which lines of this paragraph, right? Now if I read the entire passage, I can completely understand that the first three lines are introducing the concept of eco-efficiency. So they become the introduction. From here we start understanding that these two people, that is Peter and Gordon, are saying that although this concept is good, but basically they pose some threat, because it's simply adopting efficiency innovations could actually worsen the environment. So they are going contrary. So herein they are presenting the problem related to eco-efficiency, right? I've just written problem related to eco, and till here, right? He's discussing the first problem that relates to eco-efficiency. From moreover, I start reading and I get to know that yes, he's discussing the second problem that relates to eco-efficiency. So he's discussing the second problem that relates to eco-efficiency from moreover till here. And in the last lines, he's discussing how can uh, we use eco-efficiency in a more effective way, right? Rather than directly using it, he's discussing how can we use it nicely. So I'll just term it as better usage, or you may say another better way in which we can, right? So I have divided my entire passage into four subparts, right? The first part, it introduces the uh, concept of eco-efficiency, right? Second part, it relates to the problem, and if I have to put it into words, I'll say the first problem is of the wastage, so the second part discusses the wastage. The third part discusses how this can be used in the non-eco inefficient manner, so that relates to money, so I'll name it as the money part, right? And the fourth one is about how do we deal it in a better way, right? Now, why have I done this? Because when I start reading the questions, if the question relates to the wastage thing, I know where to look for the answer. If the question relates to money, I know where to look for the answer. If it relates to something that's testing your understanding on eco-efficiency as a whole, I know where to look for the answer. For some possible course of action, I know where to look for the answer. I have divided the entire information into subparts, right? And also have made a proper flow chart, which is something like that. First of all, we pass the introduction, then we discuss the wastage, then we discuss the money thing, right? And lastly, we discuss the conclusion or the course of action, and this is the flow chart. So if there's a main idea or the understanding of the passage, if it asks you what is the purpose of writing, I'll be able to tell it very conveniently. Right. Let's take a question that's based on this very passage. It asks, explain the primary purpose of the passage, and these are the available alternatives. Right. Now, I have made the entire flowchart with me. The first part was introduction, second was waste, then was money, and lastly it was the better ways or how do we use it, right? And the introduction is about a business strategy, that is eco efficiency. So let's evaluate which of the following alternatives is best fits into this very flowchart. Explain why a particular business strategy has been less successful than was once anticipated. Is that the case? No, we are not comparing it actually, right? And there is no statistical data that helps us to estimate this. We are just saying that it can be less effective, yes, but how do we deal with this problem? That has also been discussed, right? Purpose of an alternative to a particular business strategy that has uh, inadvertently caused ecological damage. Is eco efficiency caused ecological damage? No, the problems that we are talking about are the wastage and the money, that whether or the profit that we've earned would be put into eco efficiency or not. So it has nothing to do with ecological damage. It goes incorrect again. Present a concern about the possible consequences of pursuing a particular business strategy. Yes, this is an a good explanation to the question, the primary purpose. Why? Because this is what both these people have done. They told you that first problem that we may face is about the wastage, and the second problem we may face is money, and rather than putting it directly, we must do it in the other way. So you're discussing the possible consequences and not the particular consequences. So this is an appropriate option. Make a case of applying a particular business strategy on a larger scale. He's not discussing it on the scales, right? So it goes incorrect again. And lastly, suggest several possible outcomes of companies' failure to understand the economic impact of particular business strategies. No, even this is incorrect. Why? Because it's pertinent to one company, and we are not discussing any company, it goes incorrect as well. So the only option left is option number C. Let's do it again with this paragraph. Here, this whole passage is divided into two smaller subparts. So again, you may pause the video and try and understand what exactly is happening in this passage. Now, if I want to divide this passage, I'll say the first paragraph is discussing, uh, it is introducing you to some research, and it is telling you that what exactly is the research about. So it is introducing you to the research about the frequency of tooth breaks in a variety of some animal, some carnivorous animal. And the second paragraph, we are discussing the reasons for this higher frequency in the past, right? So I've divided this information. In the first paragraph, he's telling you that there was some study that showed up that the breakage frequency is changed, and the second one is describing how what are the different reasons. Now I've divided the information. If further I want to divide it, I'll say that here he's discussing till from in to the labra area. In this part of the paragraph, is discussing the inappropriate reasons that cannot be the reason, and here he discusses the actual reason, right? So I have further divided my information. So my flow chart, the type of the chart that I'll make is that first of all he introduces a study, then he discusses the reasons. First of all he discusses which reasons cannot be estimated to be the correct reason, and lastly he tells you what was exact reason that the study has postulated. So what were the exact findings, right? um, in a better refined manner, I'll say that first we introduce what was the study, and then we discuss what were the exact postulates of the study. So what were the exact findings of the study, right? And if I am asked what is the primary purpose of the passage, and these are the available alternatives that I have, so I'll evaluate each alternative. Again, I'll draw my flowchart. There was a study, and in the second paragraph I'm discussing what were the findings. So what did I find? Or I introduce a study about the frequency of tooth break, and next I discuss the reasons for tooth breaks. So these are the two methods in which I can break my study or my understanding, and I evaluate my alternatives based on this very fact. So first alternative says present the several explanations to a well-known fact. This is not a well-known fact. There is no well-known fact. It was a study. It was a hypothesis. So it goes incorrect. Suggest alternative methods for resolving a debate. There is no debate again. The study was to find what were the reasons, and the findings were uh, about, like, these could be the possible reasons, and the most appropriate one is the fourth one. So this goes incorrect as well. There's no debate between two people. On the similar lines, I'll say that I cannot say that he's arguing in favor of some controversial theory. He's not discussing any controversies. It's just a presentation of facts based on a study. Question the methodology used in the study. He's not discussing the methods, he's discussing the findings. And discuss the implications of the research findings. Yes, exactly. This would be my answer. Why? Because in the second paragraph, first paragraph is discussing what is the study, second is discussing the findings or the implications of the study. So that becomes my answer. So you can very well see that now, since I've divided the entire passage, I'm very easily able to answer what are the questions. Let's take another example. For example, this is a big paragraph again in front of you, right? And now again pause the video and try and break it up into the various different types. What do you feel, which paragraph discusses what? The first paragraph, it talks about the emergence, or it talks about some technologies. It is introducing you some technology. It's an introduction to that how the new technologies help in benefiting the people, right? So or to shape up a better world, right? So it's an introduction to the uh, emergence of technologies. That is what we can say. In the second paragraph, he takes up one particular technology about VCRs and VHS, and he's making a comparison. So he's comparing VCR to VHS, and he's just taken one technology. In the third paragraph, he's discussing that why was VHS more popular or why VHS wins. I'm just writing which VHS wins as in a small note which will let me to understand that what is being discussed here. So this is the flow chart. Now if I interpret the flow chart, what do I understand? That he's introduced you to a concept. The concept is about that how the better technologies take over the obsolete ones. Then he's taken an example of VCRs and VHS and explained the concept by explaining how VHS could win over VCR. This is the flow chart. And if the question is the primary purpose of the passage, again, if I draw the flow chart, first of all, he introduces the concept. Then he takes an example of VCR and VHS. And then he discusses how VHS won over VCR to explain this very concept. And if I read the options, he's not evaluating two competing technologies, because if it was an evaluation, he would have discussed the technical points as well. It goes incorrect. Tracing the impact of new technologies. No, he's not tracing the impact. Reinterpreting an event from the contemporary business history. Now, this is a very wide term. Business history. It does not only incorporate technologies, it incorporates other things as well. Information system, marketing, finance, HR, normal operations, production, right? It incorporates all these things. So this goes incorrect as well. It's a very, very wide term, all right? Or it illustrating a business strategy by means of the case study. This is what we've just said, that he is illustrating a business strategy that is related to technologies. He's introduced to a business strategy, and to explain that he's taking an example of VCR and VHS. So this is an appropriate option. This goes incorrect. This becomes an appropriate option. So my answer would be option number D. I'll just discuss the option number E as well. Proposing an innovative approach of business planning. No, he's not discussing business planning. Neither he's discussing any approach. This is out of the scope. So I've eliminated option number 1, 2, 3 and 5, and I've just chosen option number 4. Right? So this is how we judge the primary purpose of the passage. Just make a flowchart of whatever is happening. This will help you to, a diagram would help you to estimate the answers. Right? Let's discuss some speed reading techniques. How can you improve the speed, your speed of reading? First of all, do not speak and read. We are in a habit of speaking or vocalizing while we speak. Now, this reduces our speed of reading. Why? Because our brain tends to take more time than it actually had to take to understand what exactly is happening. So we will might get stuck over the pronunciation of some word which we do not know how to pronounce. But that is not necessary as well, right? So even if I do not know how to pronounce it, if I keep on uttering the words, okay, this, okay, how do I pronounce it? How do I pronounce it? I'm unable. I'll lose my focus, and once I've lost my focus, I lose time. So do not speak and read. Soften your gaze. If you've stressed your eyes, you may blur the words, right? So just be cool and calm while reading. Next, try reading more words in a single glance. Now, instead of reading every word individually, read 2 or 3 words together, then move to the next lot. This will save a lot much of time, right? And do not multitask. Like for example, you're reading the passage and then you're thinking about, okay, in quant I had that probability wala question. Yeah, how do I do this? How do I do this? Okay, okay. Oh, I was reading. Then I start reading again, and then oh my god, okay, would it be 1 by 5 or 5 by 1? Oh no, I'm reading. So neither be able to answer the questions of comprehension correctly, nor you'll be able to answer the question of probability correctly. Do not multitask, right? Or even if uh, there's some person who's serving water to you and you reading, and while reading you just say I need water, and then you'll again lose your focus, and once the focus is lost, you lose the entire essence of the passage, right? And as we were just right now doing it, try to draw a picture of your text. If not, actually just try and do it in your mind. Make a flowchart of all these events in your mind, right? Remember, do not get intimidated by the technical terms or the confusing language style. Just get the contextual understanding. That is what is required. The author would purposely write ornamentarily. He'll use the words that are very difficult and impressive. But that is none of our concern. We just need to understand what exactly is happening in the passage. That is what is our concern. We need not to go and find out, like, okay, what is this word written now? What do you mean by this word? You can do that after the examination. You've got a lot much of time then. But right now, just focus on understanding what exactly is required. So do not just get fed up. Oh my God, what sort of language has he used? That's so difficult to understand and interpret. It's okay if he's written difficult words. Just read the line. If you've not understood, read it again. That will help you to understand what the contextual meaning or the implied meaning. And once that is done, you're through with your purpose. You'll be able to answer the questions. And after the examination, you can obviously go and refer to the dictionaries to find the meaning of those words. But for the purpose of examination, do not lose your focus on understanding these words. Again, do not focus on the details. Right? Supposingly, if there's a passage that describing, out of which one paragraph is describing a wedding pandal, do not start reading the details. Okay, this was the type of the flower that was used, or these many twirls were made of each string of the flowers. That is not required. These are additional details. They, again, I just told you in starting, it's a puzzle that is very, very elaborated, excessively elaborated, right? So you need not to understand it. Just leave the details, look onto the relevant information, keep that in your flowchart, and reject the entire other data, right? You're not to cram the passage, you're not to present it as it is in the passage. It's an objective type paper, you just mark the correct answer. Do not make unnecessary notes or underline excessively. We are in a habit of doing it. We take a pencil, okay, we keep on underlining and reading. If you've done that, there is no fun of making the flowchart. There would be no flowchart. The entire thing would be replicated again, right? So there would be no data and information with you. So just underline what is relevant. Just keep that relevant information in your flowchart. That is it, right? Secondly, there might be the cases where you already know about the context of writing. Supposingly, a passage is presented to an engineer about some technology, some uh, web development technology, and he's a web development engineer or a software engineer. He obviously knows much more than what has been presented in the passage. But you are to keep that information aside. While being questioned, you have to just answer what has been presented in the passage. Now, for example, the passage says that we use this command and this command in making the web development more effective. But the software engineers know that this command and this command are obsolete, and these are the other two commands that we can use. And they'll start hunting for those other two commands in the answer, which they'll never find. And they'll leave the question. So keep that information aside. Whatever has been presented to you is relevant. The other things that you already know are irrelevant in the context of answering the reading comprehensions. Just maintain a positive attitude. Even if you're not able to understand the exact meaning of the passage, or it is very boring, or it is a philosophical passage that's literally very difficult to interpret completely, don't worry. Just try and understand the implied meaning and then answer the questions. Just maintain a positive attitude, right? And then Try to understand the scope, that is the main area, or the tone of the passage. And lastly, as we've already discussed, the second largest producer and the another producer. There was a difference between both these things, right? So again, read each alternative presented as the answer completely and effectively. Do not think, as we just took the example, that if it's mentioned that India is the producer of wheat followed by China, that does not mean China is the second largest producer, right? So read the entire question with the alternatives completely and nicely. And uh, there would be sentences that will use words like but, yet, nonetheless, despite, etc. These are contrasting words. They help you a lot, right? For example, if there's a question that asks you that there's a line that says, I was wearing white, but everybody was wearing red. And there's the question, uh, what was the color of the color of the clothes of everybody else in the party? So now, but would help you to estimate the answer. But is a contrasting thing. You'll be able to contrast. Okay, you just said, okay, I was wearing white, so obviously my answer is not white because there's a but attached to it, right? So again, also, hence, therefore, these are more of conclusions. So these help you to answer the questions that are based on interpretations, right? That gets us to the end of the discussion of reading comprehension. I'll just advise you, just practice more and read more to develop your reading speeds. This will help you a lot. If you've not understood how do we make the primary purpose of the passage, redo this entire video. You'll be very comfortable then. And for any further doubts, practice more questions. Well, that gets us to the end. Thank you and have a nice day.